Nice to be here with you all. So I have a couple of announcements, and I encourage you to pay attention to these because the schedule is going to have a couple of bumps in it for the month of June. So the month of June, I'll be doing some, and so there's going to be no meditation, no live meditation on June 9th and 23rd. I'll be on those days, unfortunately. I encourage you to continue to keep the time, and I'll be meditating from the friendly skies with you. So you can join me in, in presence, But I just won't be live streaming. Okay, in regards to satsang, I'm going to continue to have every satsang as long as the internet provides. But on the 13th and the 20th of June, there'll be no Facebook satsang. I'm only able to live stream from one computer, not two. So there will be a Zoom satsang every week in June. No Facebook satsang on the 13th and the 20th. June 6th, there'll be a dual satsang, meaning I'll be streaming on Facebook and Zoom, as well as the 27th. Hope that makes sense. On June 25 through 27, of course, we're having a retreat. I look forward to having you there. So I will post all these dates on Facebook, and so that they'll be there so that you can just see them clearly. But generally speaking, the only thing I'm really going to miss is the meditations on the 9th and the 23rd. And I encourage, if you really enjoy the meditations, just find one on YouTube and do it those same times, at the 7 p.m. Mountain Time on Wednesday night. And I'll be tuning in and meditating with you. So, and the more we do this, the more we establish this flow of grace, the more it becomes permanent in your life. So it's not really about you connecting with me as much as it is about you connecting with your highest self and connecting with the grace of God. And what you'll find is, like I have found in my life, that I've developed this incredible relationship with my silent partner, the Lord above. I just kept opening and opening and opening, and then it just feels as if God is with me always. And then there's no interruption. No interruption in the service. So anyways, I hope I did that right with all the dates, but like I said, I'll post them on Facebook so that they are crystal clear for all of us. Okay. Let me just check a couple things to make sure I have all my buttons right. I'm going to just switch this. Okay, there we go. So I hope you can all hear me better now. So let's do this. I'm sorry, I'm smiling here. People are writing me notes here that it's a comedy tonight. Sometimes life is a comedy. So I'll say this. Last night, my teenage daughter, actually maybe she's 20, so my 20-year-old daughter, she came over, and we were just talking about me being her dad and everything, and what her childhood was like. And out of the blue, at some point, she looked at me and she said, "Dad, you have a very scary face." And I was like, my God, what a thing to say to your father. And the beautiful thing about, having kids is they give you just such such honest feedback where, you know, most of the people in the Sangha, a lot of people just write me these beautiful emails, how kind and sweet I am and this and that. And, you know, I have this daughter who tells me, you know, one of them last night told me, Dad, you have a scary face. And my little girl, my 7-year-old, who did her first sleepover last night at a friend's house, she told me, you know, I told her I missed her so much when I went and picked her up today. It's like, sweetie, I missed you. You know, did you miss Daddy? No, Dad, I didn't miss you at all. And I'm like, okay, it's great. You know, we're doing good here. And so my kids are good at individuating. You know, they're good at you know, speaking their truth. That's normally a sign of good parenting. Um, but anyways, you know, I thought I'd just share that with you because with life is just so crazy sometimes, so wild. The feedback we get from people is sometimes helpful, sometimes insulting, and it's good to, you know, have a sense of humor, you know, like Joe does, and, you know, just acknowledge that life is a comedy. You know, the way it's written about in the Gita's, life is a play. Life is a play. You know, life is but a dream. A dream. And in a dream, you know, there could be a comedy. There could be, you know, I was even reflecting yesterday, I believe, about just how much tragedy is in life sometimes. And it's important for us to step back and just to acknowledge this, that it literally is a play. It literally is a comedy. And at times, it literally is a tragedy. Literally is a tragedy. And, you know, that's really hard when it's a tragedy, because that's when our ego fights the most, when it resists the most. And it's important, you know, if life is really hard for you, for a day, a month, a season, a year, for you to know that this too shall pass. That everything comes and goes, and there's a beginning and an end to every play, every little drama. There's, you know, scene changes and set changes. There's phases and seasons to life. And so if you're going through hell, it will pass. It will pass. And if you're, you know, just on top of your game and, you know, everything seems good, like last night I was, you know, just feeling really good. And then my daughter says, you have a scary face, Dad. She told me this. She said that this is what all of her childhood friends thought. And I was like, God, all your girlfriends were afraid of your dad. She said, well, Dad, you wear the big hat and the hood and the sunglasses. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. I do that. I do that for a couple of reasons. One, it's really sunny in Colorado, so I like them to block that sun from burning my eyes. But you know, sometimes when I walk around town, I like to be incognito, so so just so I can get in and out of the supermarket without 100 people stopping me. So, anyways, let's do this. Let's just take a moment and close our eyes and feel into how your life has been. Just noticing the times of life when it's been a bit of a comedy. And being able to smile at the silliness of being human, the silliness of human relationship, the silliness of all the collective dreams, like a house with a white picket fence, and when I get this job, I'll be so happy. And I make this much money, I'll be happy, or whatever it is. The silliness of how people have treated you and how you've treated others sometimes, and just breathing some space into that, to the comedy of human existence. Giving yourself full permission to smile at the fact that you are an angel. And yet God transported you to a world where angel wings don't work, where you can't fly. Where God put you in a dense animal body. You are a Buddha. Who's trapped in an animal body. Just breathing into that a little bit and allowing there to be some space. You know, in the 80s, they made all these silly movies where like a mother and a daughter would switch bodies. There was one, Honey, I Shrank the Kids. You know, where, you're just given a body that doesn't fully work. A mind that doesn't fully work. Just being able to smile and be lighthearted, knowing and trusting that eventually we move on to the higher realms. For any of you who are feeling that you are currently trapped in a tragedy, I would invite you to take a deep breath and breathe some love into your tragedy. It's inviting all parties to be blessed, to be supported, to be held in love. If you feel as yourself in a tragedy now or in a tragedy in the past, let's call for the grace of God to pour into the ancient tragedy of your life, the current tragedy. So inviting the body to be held, loved, supported, nurtured, uplifted. Uplifted. And then I encourage you just to reflect on the people in your life, those who are close to you. And if you know anyone who's deeply hurting, deeply struggling, let's breathe love into them, inviting God to bless them with support, healing. Support them with strength and light. Inviting them to be flooded with compassion and brilliance. Yes. Yes, very good. And so you're welcome to open your eyes and just to smile a little bit. It's important if we want to be awake to be able to step back every day and not take your life so seriously. To be able to see that it's a play. At some points you might realize it's a joke. It's a joke. A divine cosmic joke. It's also important to realize that we were all thrown into an evolutionary world. And so that means this is a world of growth. So even though it can be a joke at times and tragic at times, I can assure you that there's an intelligence to it. And if you haven't realized that, you just haven't lived long enough yet. You haven't outlived the storm. Or getting a wide enough perspective to see that. But when you start to get some perspective from your life, you see that, oh, there's themes here, there's things that you are learning, ways in which you are growing, and opportunities to awaken into a greater vision, a greater view, a greater perspective, where even tragedy makes sense. And I'll say this, depending on how intense the tragedy is, it may not make perfect sense, especially if it's violent. It won't make perfect sense. But when you step back far enough, you'll see, oh, there's something here in which I'm learning, or the other party is learning, or we're learning together. And sometimes God uses us, and the learning isn't necessarily for us, but actually for the other. There's been a lot of my life when I've been a punching bag for other people. It's like, okay, what's my part here? Oh, I'm helping another. Learn to be kind. Learn to be kind. And Gandhi had a big part of that as his path, where he was a punching bag for the British. He was helping them to learn about colonialism, imperialism, and how it lacked kindness and compassion or integrity. That was quite a violent thing, vicious thing. And I hope, of course, that you're not a punching bag for anyone, but sometimes God uses us in all sorts of ways that may not be pleasant. The ego has this perspective that it only makes sense if it feels good. But if it feels bad, it doesn't make sense. And if we want to be awake, we have to be able to step back further than using feeling as a gauge of whether something is right or wrong. Normally, when things feel good, it's in alignment with truth. But of course, not always. Sometimes we have to do something quite painful. Quite painful. And we don't even know why. I'll tell a story. Actually, something that happened with one of my good friends here in Durango. Can't remember how long ago it was. Maybe it was about 3 weeks ago or so. There was a woman here who went on a walk with her dog, and she got eaten by a bear, which is just like a crazy thing. And that's a very rare thing where I live. It's almost unheard of for a bear to attack a human. We don't have grizzly bears. We have brown bear or black bear, but like I've had so many bear encounters where I've literally just chased them away. They just run away like big puppies. But a couple weeks ago, a woman got eaten, and then a couple days after that, or maybe 4 or 5 days after that, a friend of mine, he was out in his yard. Actually, his wife was out in the yard, and she called him and said, "Hey, one of our sheep is dead, and there's a mountain lion up in the tree." And so, he was just waking up in the morning, so he got the gun and he went out in the yard and looked at the mountain lion, looked at the sheep, and he realized, okay, I need to handle this situation. He shot the lion, which he said he really didn't want to do. But he has dogs, and there's like lots of young kids around his farm. And he was speaking to a couple of his friends who were like firemen and first responders who were first on the scene with the woman who was killed. And what everyone said there, who showed up, was that the woman's body was buried. It's not something really that bears do out here. And it looked more like a cat had gotten her, and he lived in a real similar place. And so just in a roundabout way, God had used him. God had used him, to handle the situation with this cat. And it just brought, tears to his eyes having to do this. To shoot an animal, especially a majestic creature like a big cat. But sometimes God puts us in these situations where it's like we don't have a choice. We don't have much choice. We don't know what to do, and we choose a lesser of two evils. And what was nice with this was that later on, after the fact, after he shot the cat, and he was just feeling so terrible about it. Many of the first responders were speaking with him and said, you probably killed the cat that killed the lady. There's a good chance, It's rare that a cat would attack a lady anyways, but it's much more common than bears. But if a cat does, or an animal does attack a human, then, it's best if, someone takes its life. And it's just one of those things, this world is, sometimes we're just in these situations which make no sense, where we're in between a rock and a hard place, where we have to make, a really tough decision. It's like none of us are going to get out of this world without causing harm. We can do our best, to live in a way that doesn't cause harm. Like I live as a, vegetarian, mostly vegan diet, and I try to eat low in the food chain and try to be kind and sweet to the best of my ability, but you just can't live in a way where no harm is caused. None of us can live a perfect life. We will fail. We will make mistakes. We will have to do difficult things. And there's a humility in that. Just this humility that knows that God is in charge of this world. God makes the rules of this world. And our ego, it can't outsmart life. It can't control everything in life. It can't. Can't control everything in life. Most of us, or most of our egos unconsciously, we think we can control life. We can control all the factors and make it all end up perfectly. But we can't. And it's important for the ego to be reminded of this. Their controlling nature, for the superego, for the critic. To be reminded of this basic truth that we're not in charge. We're in charge of our choices. And even that is up for debate. I think of it as the more awake you are and the more fully you live in alignment with your heart, then you're in charge of your choices. When you're in your ego, you're not really in charge of your choices. You just You just act out the antics of the ego. You act out the antics of the ego. But the more awake you are, the more you're able to step back from the ego. Step back and get a vast perspective and step down into the intelligence of your heart. Then you can actually make a conscious decision. A conscious decision. And that's the best any of us can do, is make a choice in alignment with truth. And so anyways, if anyone has a question, I'll invite it forward. The raise your hand button, let's see if I can pull this off, is down at the bottom of the screen at the reactions button. And welcome your questions. Let's see here. I just ask that your question is short and to the point. I'll say this. This is a reminder to folks emailing questions or asking them live. It's a skill. It's a skill to be able to ask a very clear, direct question. And sometimes people send me these long, rambling emails. I'm like, is there a question in there? Or what is it in here? But to work it out in yourself, like what is it you're wanting to ask, or what is it you're wanting to share? Okay, let's hear from Lynn. Lynn, I'm going to see if I can unmute you here. Are you here, Lynn?
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, good to see you.
Hi. So on Wednesday nights during the meditations, I think you said something recently about, wanting us to sit and hold a position and, stay in that position and not fidget. But my body has other ideas.
Sure.
And is that okay? I mean, I definitely get some good releases maybe with kriyas during the meditation sometimes. I think otherwise I might jump out of my skin. And also a lot of sometimes I feel, the things that you were talking about, but most of the time I don't. So is that normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So I'll say this. When you meditate, it's important that the spine is straight and that you don't move at all for the entire hour. And of course, I'm just messing with you. So if you have kundalini that's raging through your body and your body's bouncing all over the place, just let it flow, let it dance. And that's the best way forward. That's the best way. And so you answered your own question where you said, like Craig, my body moves. It's, it releases feel good energetically. So please let your body move any way it wants to if you have lots of kundalini. So the instruction to sit still is not for you, Lynn. It's for the people who are going like this, just itching all over like you're a gorilla with fleas or something. And a different way I could say that is if you're a wiggle worm, like some people are wiggle worms. And one of the things that happens is as we're opening together, when you sit in meditation, there's different sensations that in different places, chakra centers, that open, energies that move. And the ego can oftentimes mistake, like say there's a subtle movement in the throat chakra where the throat's beginning to open. The ego can mistake that energy for like there's an itch here, a scratch, there's something going on in my throat. What is that? And then people just start itching there, moving there. And so if you're a wiggle worm, it's important that you're just sitting straight or lying down straight, not moving, and just experiencing the energy directly. If you have kundalini kriyas, or if you have chronic pain of any sort and the body needs to move, my God, please be compassionate, and let your body move. If you have chronic pain, it could be helpful to lie down as long as you're not falling asleep. And if you have kundalini kriyas, like let your body dance and let the energy flow. And do that for a period of time. And sometimes, especially for the first 6 months of that experience, of the first year, it can be quite wild. But then eventually, see if you can just, in a very gentle way, just invite the spine to be straight and still, and see if you can guide the energy right through the center. Like with me, I'm having the same amount of energy right now as in the beginning of my kundalini awakening. And that energy in the beginning made my body dance and tremble and shake and go into seizures and contortions and all this. But now, some, like, I don't know how long, maybe 15 years later, the same energy is just flowing through my spine. And as you see, I'm not, bouncing all over the place. But it's important not to rush it, but let the body move if it wants to move. Okay, that was, I think, one question. I hope that was helpful. Your second question, if I can pull it out of the air here, was, is it okay if we don't feel everything that the teacher is describing? Yeah, that's okay. They're just pointers. And if you keep showing up, there's a good chance you'll start to feel more and more of these things. Now, for someone like you, Len, who's having a lot of kundalini flowing, the kundalini may be overshadowing some of these other things that are happening. And again, that's not bad. That's just how God is choosing to work in you. So we go with that. But if I'm offering instruction, like, to bring your attention to your crown chakra, you can just check in there with the crown and just notice, is my crown open? Do I feel anything there? And, especially in regards to receiving grace, a lot of people, or I'll say it this way, the people of the hardest time receiving grace are the ones who are, I give a couple options here: angry at God, resistant toward God, don't like the idea of God, the concept of God. Let's see here. Are card carrying atheists, which, if that was anyone in the song, I don't know what you'd be doing here, but well, your heart would have brought you here. But so sometimes when if we are angry at God, what happens is we're closing our chakras receptive doors, or their receptive antennas. And or another option too is if we are a staunch individual, like, I'm just gonna be kind of mean here, like cold-hearted Buddhist, like just incredibly individualistic. The Buddha said there was no God, so there's no God, and I'm just gonna be enlightened all by myself. And the Buddha didn't really say there was no God, but basically he wanted to awaken to awareness and not necessarily the heaven realms. Paradoxically, as you awaken to awareness, the heaven realms start to come in as well. But anyways, so it's a good question to ask of, do I need to be closed to God? If I am, does it serve me in any way? And also, a different way of asking that question is, it's like, how much is this anger that I have towards God, or how much is that serving me? How much is my resistance toward God serving me? So I'm going to use this word, many egos do an equation, and the equation goes something like this: because life is hard, that means there is no God. Because life is hard, if there is a God, I'm just going to hate God because God created this world. Because my life is so hard, I got to be angry at someone. And so I'm going to be angry at God. I'm going to blame God. And therefore, I'm going to close myself off to God. And unfortunately, you will suffer if you play that game. And so then I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to just, to everyone. And we might just look at, well, like, how much is it going to cost me to open to God? It doesn't cost me anything. It's free to open to God. And your life will do nothing but improve if you open to the energies of grace. Because the way I look at it is life as a human being is way too hard. It's like me against the world. It's too hard to do this thing alone. It's just ridiculously hard. And so what I learned early on is, God, I can't do my life. I can't make sense of it. I'm certainly no saint. I can't control it. I'm not, incredibly skilled at this realm. Like, I need some help. I need some help. And so it's through this doorway of humility. And so humility is the opposite of, say, something like resistance or anger. Humility is say, yes, please, I could use some support. I could use some support here, Lord. Will you come into me and show me another way to live? And you can still, acknowledge, like, from a place of validation, just like healthy validating. My God, life is so hard. And so, God, can I have some support? Whereas most people go, my God, life is so hard, and therefore there is no God. My God, life is so hard, and I just got to shut all the doors and do this all by myself. And that's, kind of like the ego in a nutshell, is I need to do this all by myself. It's me against the world. And when we take that on, we suffer greatly. And not only do we suffer, our chakras are contracted in that state of consciousness. And, I will say this, it's a rational thing to do. To be, it's just like if you fall in love when you're 14 years old and you get your heart broken, it's very rational to say, I will never love again. But just like with drinking, when people get overly drunk and that are hungover and they say, I'll never drink again, there's a part of you that says, well, I am going to love again. I am going to drink again. Unless you're like me and have an allergy and you can't drink. But anyways, I hope it makes sense that your life will change if you open, if you trust. And as you trust more, your chakras open, and you start to feel and experience more of the things that I'm speaking about. And for some people, that takes a little bit of time. And so the last thing I'm going to invite Lynn for you to look at is look at the part of you that wants to know if you're doing something wrong. And let's acknowledge that you're not. Like sometimes we have a strong critical voice in our head that's like always looking to see if we're doing something wrong or judging ourselves. And like sometimes our questions arise out of that, especially, am I doing it right, Craig? Or should this be happening? And let's acknowledge that, Lynn, if you have a tremendous amount of energy moving through your body, tremendous amount of kundalini, you're doing something right. And so let's build upon that and say, there's something good within Lynn that is open, despite her humanity. And that's one of the things my teacher used to point out with the character of Craig. My teacher said, like, there's something Craig is doing right. Like there's something, your soul, Craig, is doing right, despite your humanity. Because I was such, such a train wreck for my teacher. But he said, have faith, like have faith in the part of you that is open. Have faith in the part of you that is awake. Have faith in the part of you that continues to show up. Have faith in the part of you, Lynn, that like when the teacher says, you have to sit like a Zen monk and don't move. but your intuitive guidance is saying, but I need to move and it's helpful for me to move. Listen to your truth, because it's probably right. It's probably right. Not the egoic truth, not the critical truth, but your deep truth. That's the voice we want to listen to. And so my job is to support that in you coming more fully forward. So anyways, thanks, Lynn, for the question. That was a beautiful question. And thanks for helping me clarify that. It's funny, because sometimes as a teacher, I always hesitate on telling people, to meditate in a way that's, where you sit still, because people who have strong critics, they use that type of teaching to beat themselves up. And then people who are wiggle worms, they just keep wiggling. So the ones who should be listening are, and the ones who don't need to be listening, they're using the teaching as a way to beat themselves up. And I did that too within my own self. I took, any instructions way too literally and seriously, and oftentimes to the point of doing violence to my own self, because I took, ascetic or renunciate teachings too literally. So anyways, thanks, Lynn, for being here. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll invite some more questions, and it's like Richard. Richard has a question. You hear Richard?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. I want to share a quick insight before my question. I'll make it short, so I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I was having an insight about teachers yesterday in regards to, when you come into the field of a teacher where the transmission is aligned, there's inevitably going to be some kind of personality dynamics. But as you mature as a student, you learn to drop that a little more, or you learn to hold that a little more lightly, which allows you to receive the fullness of the transmission a bit more.
Yeah.
It's kind of transparency. And I was just like, that's so beautiful. Because I feel like there's such a need to be able to allow yourself to be human, the teacher to be human, but also acknowledge the lineage transmission, or just transmission itself, and why anyone is here in the first place.
Yeah.
So that was the insight. My question today, it feels unbelievably vulnerable, but I really want to ask it. It feels right. Is that, I am having, I wouldn't even call it an issue. It's just something that is arising to be healed, that comes from like my core trauma from when I was 7 years old. So I'm 29 now. That's 22 years. And so, my core trauma included my sexuality. And so it's ways that I'm kind of acting out sexually, right? That are kind of compulsive and have an addictive element. And I, I've done lots of work with this. And so I think there's less and less like shame around it. There's less and less like, it's more just like this comes up and I get so immediately hooked in, or kind of entranced. And that's the piece that I really am maybe seeking feedback or guidance about. I kind of just wanted to know what comes forward. Is like, there's nothing else in my life that has this, or that I've experienced so far, that has this kind of gravity to just kind of hook me in. And I recognize that it's a choice. So it's not, there's part of me that feels victim to it, but there's another part that recognizes like, okay, I'm opting into this. And yet the power of it is just so much. Again, trauma, sexuality, 22 years, there's a lot going on that contributes to that. But I'm just curious as to what would, come forward in you in regards to that. And thank you in advance.
Yeah. Let's see here. So I will say this, that you know, anything that has anything entangled with sexuality, or you know, just the experience of or I'm sorry, the power and the energy of procreation, is going to have a tremendous amount of energy behind it. And so you know, that's why people struggle with this so greatly. And so whether it's tied to trauma or not, like, this is a topic that just has enormous power and expressiveness behind it. And so all of us, especially between the years, say, of 14 and you know, to about, you know, 38 or 40, most people have a lot of energy in the sexual arena. And whether there's been a little bit of wounding, no wounding, tremendous wounding, you know, it's like taking a wound and pressurizing it. You know, that's what, you know, sexual energy is: pressurized energy. It's energy that it wants to connect and it wants to express, because, you know, our species is dependent upon it. And so from one perspective, it's completely impersonal. That the sexual drive is 100% impersonal. I'll say this from one perspective. And when we have trauma there, you have a trauma, and it has, you know, basically a lot of wind behind it, a lot of pressure behind it. And so it's going to bring it into the light of awareness again and again and again. And with sexual desire, you know, especially when we're young, you know, I encourage people not to fight with it, not to repress it, and not to act it out in ways that are harmful or will cause harm. But I want everyone to hear that, because in there is a little bit of wiggle room for there to be a healthy sense of expression and enjoyment. It's not causing karma, not causing harm, and just acknowledging, like, God, like, that energy is just in all mammals. Oh, actually, in all creatures. That energy's there, and it doesn't really belong to us. It just wants to move. It's not bad. You know, we've projected on it that it's bad, or it shouldn't be happening, or it shouldn't be here. We should be able to control it in every moment, or this and that. But it's just here. It's just an energy that's here. And let's be real blunt here. If that energy didn't have so much pressure behind it, most of us wouldn't be here. like most humans would not exist, literally. Would not exist, literally. And so there's that, you know, there's the impersonal aspect of it. Also, I will say this, from a perspective of trauma and healing, from a spiritual perspective, one of the dances that God dances is, if there's a wound, that wound will repeat itself, or an aspect of its manifestation will repeat itself. And it will repeat itself until it's healed. And that's actually supposed to happen. Supposed to happen. So I'll say this, like, my father was very hard on us boys. There's three of us. He was just really hard on us. And, you know, he didn't do much to heal it. He basically drank his life. And so it didn't heal in him. And then when I was quite young, and I had my first child. My first child was actually an adopted child. And I noticed, like, the way I disciplined my son Noah, it was really harsh. And right away I noticed Mike Holiday, that's my father, his voice was moving through me. And here I was, just this really young kid, I was like 20. I can't remember how old I was when I first kid, but I was like 23, 24. I was young. And even though I was young, I was a seasoned meditator. I had a great perspective of mindfulness. I can remember the first time I heard my father's voice speak through me. And it just stopped me. I was like, oh my God, like my father is here in me. And like Richard was describing, like I couldn't stop it, this voice from coming forward. It just would come. I could see it, and sometimes I could control it, and other times it just came out in just a unconscious way. Even though I was conscious of it. There was a force, there was a pressure behind it. And it came out enough that my first wife said, hey, like, you have a problem. You're acting like your father. And because it came out, and because, she could give me consistent feedback that I was being a jerk, then I was able to begin to do my healing work. So it's almost like the trauma had to come out. It had to create a mess, unfortunately, for my son. It had to create a mess. And unfortunately for my marriage, it had to create a mess there. And because of the mess, it was brought into the light, and then it was able to begin to be healed. To begin to be healed. And I can say this with a smile, most of it was healed, except for the part that my daughter told me last night that, what'd she say? I want to say a mean face, a scary face, because there was still some of my father's, face. He was like a guy you look at, you'd be like, oh boy. And so there's still some shreds of it, to be worked out. And so just to know, like, this is part of evolution, is we have things, and sometimes things just need to work themselves out. And in the working of themselves out, sometimes, we just have to go through like a compulsive, addictive dance with something for a period of time. Some things just need to play themselves out. And no matter how mindful we are, how clear we are, how much self-control we have, sometimes things just need to play themselves out. And I want everyone to hear this. That is not an excuse for the ego to do whatever the heck it wants to, but rather, to just give yourself a healthy dose of compassion, of like, yeah, I got this thing that I do, and it's not the highest, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I wish it wasn't there, but it is still there. And like, the beautiful thing about being human is it just opens us to a door of humility. Like, we realize, I am not perfect. I'm not. And the more you can forgive yourself, the more you forgive others, the more you can be compassionate. This life is so much easier. And just like you were saying, Richard, with your first, your insight that you had, like, about, working with teachers, like, if I can get over like their quirkiness of their personality, or the roughness of their personality. Like, if anyone hangs out with me, you realize like I have a really rough personality, a really rough speaking style. Like, and if you can forgive me for that, you might be able to receive something here. It's just like I had to forgive myself for being so rough. And as I forgive myself, I open and I receive what's here. I receive what's here. But if I was busy judging myself every time I said the wrong word or got all my words mixed up or whatever, just talk in a rambling way, I would never be open to grace because I'm always failing in these departments. So the degree that you can forgive yourself, the degree that you see your own unconscious, to the degree that you can soften around your own humanity, what happens is there's this freedom, where there's a freedom to be human, a freedom to allow everyone to be human, freedom to allow this world to be as it is. But if we have an unrealistic expectation of perfection, oh my God, life is so hard because this is not a perfect world. This is an evolutionary world. Like we said in the beginning, it's a tragic world. It's a tragic world. It's a comedic world. And so it's important. It's important to allow humility to be there. And the beautiful thing about, sex, sexuality, sitting on the toilet, having to eat food, having low blood sugar, I don't know, being addicted to substances or whatever. It's like all these ways, just help any sense of superiority or arrogance or aloofness or any expectation of perfection. It's just like God just has this sword where he's just like pummeling us, cutting us to shreds. It's like, oh, you think you're great, but I mean, God, you kind of stink, it's like human beings stink. They stink. More and more as we're getting out, like yesterday, I found myself at a farmer's market and everyone was being out and being wild and just crazy and just, there was, all kinds of hippies and just, just all kinds of folks just being as wild and as nutty and as, mentally ill as it could be. And I was just looking out at this crowd, just, God, us humans, like we are one step above, a bunch of wild animals, wild hooligans here, it's like, what is going on on this planet, and so it's important to have that humility. This funny thing that happens is when you're humble with your animal nature, you actually become much more divine, much more closer to your divinity. You start to fall more fully in alignment with your Buddha nature. If you're willing to admit the silliness of being human, the difficulty of being human, and get out of the ego that thinks it's so righteous or perfect or whatever. You just become so much closer to God. So anyways, a beautiful question. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, good to see you. All right, Ben, are you here? Say something, Ben.
Okay,
There you are.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. So I'm noticing sometimes maybe when I'm listening to you or audio or meditating, and then I feel an embodiment of what you're talking about. It's like, whoa, and something really opens up. But what tends to happen It's like a kid when he's learning how to ride a bike and he's like, I'm doing it. And as soon as he does that, then he falls over. You know, as soon as you get up on the wave and you're surprised you're up on the wave, then you fall over. So, you know, some momentum would be nice. I mean, I think the answer is to get back up on the board and get back up on the bike. You know, I don't know. I just wanted to hear what you had to say about that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. And so one of the things actually that Adya taught me was like, say you step into an awakened state of consciousness, you've shifted into a greater view, to really pay attention to the moment when you fall out of it. And, you know, like one of the things Adya would say to me would be, like, what thought did you believe that closed the aperture of awakened vision? What thought? And I really took that teaching to heart, and I would notice, because the thing that I like to do was go on retreat. And on retreat, you know, to be like, oftentimes, as soon as I started to drive toward the retreat, I wouldn't even get there, you know, but as soon as I started to drive there or fly there, whatever, you know, as soon as I started to pack my bag for the retreat, I felt this view open up, like the aperture become quite wide and open. And it become more and more open on retreat. And then, you know, when I was coming home, you know, like right about the time when I checked my computer or my email, or you know, for me, a lot of times because I had kids and I was co-parenting with my ex-wife, I'd call her and I would just notice, like, as soon as I thought about calling her, it'd be like, you know, it's like, you know, Craig, can you be open and call and talk to someone and have a conversation with someone maybe who doesn't like you, maybe who's going to be upset with you because you were gone, but can you stay open, you know, with someone who's frustrated? Can you stay open while you parent? Can you stay open while you sit in traffic? Can you stay open while you're challenged? And then that became, in a sense, a practice I took on as basically, can I stay open always? Always. Always. And you know, it's important to have a real clear sense of mindfulness of what thought is it that you pick up, what thought is it that you believe that begins, you know, to create the feeling of shutting down. And then to ask, like, who is it that notices that thought? Who is it that notices that thought? Who is it that's noticing the shutting down? And the beautiful thing about that, like a question like that, is who is it that's noticing you shutting down? Oh, there's something here that's noticing the shutting down. Oh, so there's someone here who's actually awake, even while they are shutting down. What is the space in which shutting down is happening or awakening is happening? Boy, that's a big question. What is the space in which shutting down is happening or awakening is happening? A different way of asking that is, if you find yourself shut down, or if you find yourself having like lots of repetitive thoughts, how much space is here that's allowing these repetitive thoughts? How much space is here that's allowing this addictive behavior? How much space is here that's allowing your life to happen, whether your life feels good or bad? Oh, there's space here all the time. There's a space here in which the character of you arises. Can you notice that space? And so I play with all these questions. So say I found myself just in the grips of anxiety. And I would notice the space in which anxiety was arising. And that was really helpful because then I began to realize, oh, this perspective is always here, whether I feel good or I feel bad. This space is always here, whether I have anxiety or no anxiety. This space is always here, whether I have depression or no depression. The space is here, whether I'm having addictive thoughts or no addictive thoughts. Because the mistake many of us make is that awakening is a feeling. But true awakening is a perspective in which feelings arise, whether they're good, enlightened feelings, or no feelings or lots of feelings, that there is space here. And so I played with all these questions of when do I shut down? That's a primary one. And then another primary one is, what is this space in which shutting down or opening up is happening? Is that space not always here? Oh yeah. What is that space? Oh, that space is the very space of my consciousness. And really beginning to claim that, own that, like to stand in this. And realize, yes, there is something here. A space of consciousness in which this life is arising. And the more you acknowledge this space, the more free you become. But the more you give like priority or like the main seat to your egoic nature, well then you just feel like you're lost in the dream. And so we have to see that this is, to truly establish here, it's a shift in identification to knowing oneself as space. Like I know myself as space. If I knew myself as simply a character, well, that's, egoic identification, that's samsara. But as you know yourself as a space in which the character arises, then things greatly shift. And that takes some retraining because like your thinking mind doesn't know what to do with it. Like I am the space, like, no, I'm all these thoughts. I'm the memories. I'm this, I'm the gender, I'm the age, I'm the mean face, or whatever it is, that you think you are. I'm the critic. I'm the righteous one. I need to be right. It's like, okay. If you want to be petty, then yeah, identify with those things. You want to be small or limited, identify with those things. But most of us don't realize that we have a choice where to identify. Because, the awakened identity is so ephemeral or etheric. It's like you can't grab a hold of it. But as you begin to stand in it and begin to feel it and feel the immensity of it, the power of it, the light of it, the love of it, it's can be intoxicating and wondrous in a way that's can be good addictive. It's like, oh yeah, like in a sense, to shift your identity, you have to go from being addicted to ego to being addicted to consciousness, being addicted to God, being addicted to Buddha nature. Whereas, oh yeah, like I am Buddha nature. It's a good thing to be addicted to. It's like, yeah, I want to be addicted to Buddha nature. That's what it means to shift in identity. Which you give yourself permission to be big versus being small. And then what you find is you start to play these games or play around with these inquiries. You discover, oh, it is really painful to be contracted in an ego. Like, it feels like garbage. It just feels like garbage. It just does. And I don't mean that in an insulting way anyway, but it's kind of like, does anyone want to go back and identify with being like a middle school kid? No, like, no one wants to identify with being, 13-year-old kid. Like, no, it's like a hell realm. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to raise my hand to go to the potty. Like, I don't want to be so self-conscious and like, and so it'd be like say you get into adulthood and then for some reason you choose to be like a middle school kid. It's like, like, I don't want to do that. It feels, I can't handle that. I can't handle being that small and limited. And so what you find is more and more as you allow yourself to be huge, and you realize this hugeness is what I am. Because it feels so intuitively true. It feels like you've landed in home. Like, I am home in my hugeness. And then to go back to middle school, you're like, no, like that it hurts. It literally hurts. I don't want anything to do with it. And so anyway, so you'll find that your body will actually have a visceral reaction. Like, once you've discovered the space and you start to melt into the space, or into light, or into love, or into compassion, like when you realize how big and compassionate your heart is, and then you say a mean, judgmental thing, you're like, ugh, like, like you ate something like that you didn't, like, I don't know what people eat that's rotten, but like sometimes you get a rotten nut, and you eat it, you're like, ah, what is that? It tastes, that's not right. I gotta spit that out. And spitting it out is the right thing. It's like, yeah, I don't want to be small. I don't want to be limited. I don't want to be limited. So anyways, thanks for sharing, Ben. It's good to see you. Good to have you here. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to honor the time, so I better hurry up here. So someone actually asked a question about this. It was Nick. Nick said, "Hi, Craig. I had a Kundalini awakening last year. While the path is still unfolding and my life perspectives are completely different now, I do find myself falling back into materialism, self-image, dating, and other worldly things like that. I thought now that I'm awakening, I would have transcended these kinds of temptations." I love the word temptation. It sounds, it's just such a funny word. It's like we're all monks and we're not allowed to eat ice cream, but they're still part of my life. I've tried to be a renunciate in the past and it just didn't resonate. I was hoping you might have some input on this. Yeah, so Nick, I recommend a path of Tantra. And so Tantra basically takes your life experience and uses it as a doorway to awakening. So say, for example, like you find yourself, we'll use this one, dating. And it's like, dating's not a bad thing. Now, the question for you to ask, like a Tantra question is, what do I really want? Do I just want to date random people? It's like you go into a candy store and eat just like all the different pieces of candy. Or is there, something that deeply resonates with you? Like, are you dating because you're trying to find your soulmate or your partner and you want to grow together on a spiritual path, or you want to share a life and a family together? Then that's Tantra, where you say, what do I really want? Like, what's truly at the heart, say, of dating? If you look at materialism, like what's truly at the heart of materialism? So normally with materialism, if we feel into it, there's an unmet need there. And so the way we do Tantra with materialism as you look at all these things that you're chasing after buying or purchasing, you ask, like, do I really want these? What need are these trying to fulfill? Like, are you using materialism as a way to, like shopping as a way to avoid insecurity or to fill a hole, or to cover up anxiety? And so the Tantra is to sit and to look at this, to ask, like, what is this really about? Like, some people, call materialism just like wanting a car. It's like, no, it's important that you have a vehicle, so you get to point A to point B, and that the vehicle runs and it's safe, and especially if you have children and this type of thing, you want to have a good vehicle in the world. Like Arjuna, he had a good chariot, and he had a good charioteer. It was Krishna. And so there's nothing wrong with eating a piece of chocolate every now and then. It's just if we're chasing after chocolate as a way to avoid something within us. And so I encourage you, Nick, to do Tantra, just to look at, what do I really want? What do I really want? What's underneath this egoic desire? So Tantra it's an examination of your egoic desires and the psychological energies that are underneath it. And then when you look at these energies, can you meet these psychological energies with love, with insight, with compassion, with clarity, with discipline? Ask, well, what is this about? Sometimes if we simply try to transcend or renounce, we can actually develop a great shadow. And one of the things that awakening does is it doesn't want us to have a shadow. It wants to bring everything into the light to be healed. Because as things are healed, and the ego is upgraded and is brought into alignment with God's plan. Ego is not a bad thing, it's a stepping stone to a higher consciousness. And so I encourage you, Nick, to look at all these things and to make sure we're not, so often people chase desire because they're afraid to be alone. And if you look at that, I'm afraid to be alone. What does that say about my connection with God? My connection to my heart? My connection to truth? When you have a strong connection to God, your heart, truth, to yourself, you're not afraid to be alone. You actually love being alone. I love being alone. It's a blessing for me. There's some free time. And so Tantra is a willingness to look at these things and to use them as your spiritual path. A lot of people teach Tantra as just like exploring all your desires, and that's not Tantra. That's just exploring your desires. That's a game of ego. That's your ego BSing yourself. So anyways, okay. Here's a question from Bonnie. Hi, Craig. I've officially entered the declutter stage. Can you please talk about what is actually driving this impulse? What am I making space for energetically? Well, I don't know, Bonnie. I don't know what you're making space for energetically. But if you find yourself just full of stuff, again, let's do Tantra with that. Saying, do I need all this stuff? Can I let go of this stuff? And as you let go of it, then you see what God is bringing into your life. You see what God has in store for you. It's hard to be free if we're full of egoic ideas, whether it's our ideas or someone else's ideas. If we're full of just junk, like material junk and goods, and we're tripping over everything. And so sometimes God comes in with a big garbage truck and just, the big bin, and says, fill me up, and takes it away from us. And we begin to discover who we are without anything. Who we are without anything. Like, who am I without thoughts, without beliefs, without a political agenda, without a woke ideology or an anti-woke ideology? You know, like, who am I without all these thoughts? Like, what is it that I am without all this righteousness, these agendas? Who am I without an age, without a gender, without personality? Who am I? And so, Bonnie, God is wanting to show you something greater than the clutter. And can you step into this? Can you join with this force? And begin to walk out into the night and see what's there. See what's there. Begin to own this. Because one thing you've had, Bonnie, is you've had a tremendous amount of like psychic phenomena and astral stuff. And sometimes with kundalini, there could be all kinds of fireworks. But kundalini isn't, a path just to fill you up with fireworks and light shows. After all that stuff has burned itself out, what's there? What's present? What is awake and alive and vibrant? And so anyways, I encourage you to play with that. Okay. Did I do my part? I think I got through it. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to recap the schedule because many of you couldn't hear me in the beginning. I'll be here all next week. So all the classes, everything. On June 13th and 20th, I'll only be offering satsang on Zoom. On June 9th and the 23rd, I will not be offering a meditation because I'll be on an airplane. But I encourage you to continue to meditate as a group that evening. And just show up. Just show up and connect into the energies. Call upon God. You can click on one of the old YouTube meditations if you like. But continue to connect into the transmission and see what comes. See what comes. June 25 through 27, there'll be a retreat. I hope all of you can come. And with retreat, it's one of those times when, like Ben was speaking about, we can step into this awakened state and it can become more permanent. There's a great opportunity on retreat for you to put everything down, to step into this space, step into this light. So I encourage you to join if you can. It will be recorded for those of you in Europe and Australia and Asia. If you're in a different time zone, you can come to most of it if you can. But I'd truly love to have you and really encourage. I'm a big fan of retreat practice. I think those are all my announcements. And so let's all do this. Encourage you to close your eyes. Just to feel the space in which my voice is arising. The space in which your thoughts arise. The space in which sensation arises. Just notice this space. Step more fully into this space. Can you be this space? Be it. So just noticing how big awareness is, how vast, how luminous. I encourage you to feel into the space of the heart. Notice how much light is here. so much radiance. And to acknowledge that this light is you, is your divinity, is your angelic nature, is your Buddha nature. And I encourage you just to try this on. I am space. I am light. I am love. I am this space. I am this light. I am this love. All my thoughts, all my emotions arise within this space, arise within this light. The character, the human character that I've identified with so much that I can see, that I can witness, is arising within this space of light, within this space of love, within this space of radiance. And so I'm going to challenge you to rest here, to stay in this space, stay in this light, stay in this love. And notice the first thought that you have that begins to create a contraction. A contraction. Notice the first time, first movement when you shift out of this. And as you catch yourself, just know that you're able to shift back into this light, this love, this space. Do you have a choice to be big, fast, and free? Or be small and limited? You have a choice. To be awake, to be a Buddha, or to be a normal human. There's no judgment in either. You can be small or you can be big. It's up to you. And so I'll leave you with this. So much love to each and every one of you. So nice to be here. Thank you all for sharing your hearts with me, blessing me with your time and attention and your beautiful presence. Good night, everyone. Bye for now. See you next time.